Today, Fraudboxer is excited to announce our Q1 sponsor, Sardine. I've been saying since I started that the best fraud tools are created by fraud people. Well, with Sardine, you get something created by the fraud squad for the fraud squad. From KYC to onboarding fraud and payment fraud, with over 4,000 signals like device, email, telco, and even AML monitoring. They have a rule builder, custom ML models, and ship new features weekly. They understand that fraud rates are increasing and fraud budgets aren't. With Sardine, you get a team that isn't afraid to roll up their sleeves and jump in on those big investigations. You're not just buying one of the best tools, but the whole team behind it. Please give them a warm welcome by visiting www.sardine.ai today and schedule a demo. Let's get to the episode. Hey everybody, welcome to season 3 of Fraudboxer and the first season where we are now beginning video. So hi everybody, welcome. I have the bros back. We're going to talk fraud. We're going to kind of talk a little bit about our predictions and some stuff that's been on our mind a little bit. We have some big news that we're also going to talk about. So really happy to hit the ground running right here at the first week of January, get the content out there, see how everybody's doing and talk some fraud right away. You know, like it's never too early to start, guys. So how are you guys doing today?
Good. Kind of getting back into it's that week where everyone's like, hey, I'm back to work. Why was I hired to begin with? I gotta take this seriously again. We're not in the limbo time anymore. It's back to reality. And at least for the fraud community, it's an overlooked part of the season of like we focus really heavy on holiday season, increase of transactions, increase of fraud, maybe not percentage wise, but at least volume wise. Overall, which puts stress, people trying to find balance for the holidays. Now, a lot of the community is back. A lot of people are back working, trying to figure out our goals, finalizing budgeting, onboarding, hiring people. And then it's also chargeback season of the regret of purchases, overextension, and just people looking at their credit card statements themselves. And it's like this next wave of what happened. So it's not necessarily gets the attention of the holiday season, but it's the aftermath.
Yeah, some of the stuff like on our side that we're doing, and Alexander, we'll get to you too in a minute here. I don't want to steal your thunder on that. But like even this morning, we already were looking at our chargebacks for the holiday season. And we just did a new exercise this morning where we wanted to refresh our lag time to be aware of like how like in 30 days we see this many chargebacks, in 60 days we see this many, you know. And iHerb's kind of unique where we get our chargebacks really quickly. A lot of companies see most of their chargebacks are right around 45 days when they start to see the big wave. We're a lot earlier on that. And I'm happy to say like our numbers look pretty good already. You know, we've got, I would say based on like our Black Friday stuff, we would have the lion's share of our chargebacks in already. And we did pretty good. Now I will say that we spent a lot of time in the lead up to the holiday season, really tweaking the models and making sure that like it was really dialed in as far as like some of the new stuff we've been seeing versus some of the old stuff. We really wanted to maximize our conversion. So we were interested in taking on more risk, but it looks like we didn't have to, and we still were able to do a lot of conversions. So I think we ran a full automated system for the last 2 weeks of the year, which is pretty cool. So yeah. Alexander, what's up, man?
Nothing much, man. In Arizona, we didn't get any snow, so that was a very sad aspect of Christmas.
I mean, Massachusetts, we didn't get snow, and we at least typically get it here. We didn't get it. It wasn't a white Christmas here in Massachusetts. Although today it is 20 degrees, so we do have the cold frost to make up for it now.
So I didn't have any snow here either. We did have some rain over the holidays, like kind of spotty here, which is not super common for LA, but it hasn't got real cold yet. I'm waiting for it to get real cold. Still haven't used my pool, which I'd like to be able to use my pool, but it's too cold for that. So it is what it is. Let's talk first about a project that we have been working on together. And I say together, I say mostly Brian. We just jump on microphones when Brian needs us. But Brian's been doing the heavy lifting on something that I think we're really excited to share with the world. So Brian, would you talk about the House of Fraud, please?
The House of Fraud is a project for the fraud community. It is because no one goes to school to fight fraud. We all happen upon it one way or the other. We all get into this space, and our onboarding is, here's some things we did, figure it out. And we're just kind of thrown into the deep end. Um, because of that, we don't really know where to go to. We don't really know who to talk to, who to network with. At least for me, in my career, like it took me years to be qualified enough to get certified into this space. It took me years to find expensive memberships to conferences that I never had budgeted for. So at least for me, my upbringing, I never had access to this. I didn't really know how to network or meet
Yeah.
with people. And people just weren't speaking at that time publicly in like LinkedIn, social media. Everyone kind of pretended we didn't even have these jobs. So it's like, how am I supposed to know who is an expert in this place? How am I supposed to learn from people? And I mean, honestly, what I did is I would go out to people, and for like one job, I would be responsible for chargebacks. I'm like, all right, I'm going to go find someone with chargeback in their title. I'm going to reach out to 10 people. 2 people will talk to me. I'll learn from them. And that's always been my learning style. I took over content moderation, UGC, payments, ACH returns, identity theft. Each step of my career, I've kind of expanded into a new realm of fraud, but I had no grounds of it. Like I covered the majority of my role, but I needed to learn other aspects. So I'd go out and I'd learn from these people. So I've taken my learning style and actually turning it into original series of content. So I'm going out and I'm learning from all these other experts in the space, and I'm recording our conversations, whether people are teaching me something, whether we're just hopping on and talking about different topics top of mind or different questions that come from the fraud community, or just stories that are meaningful that are in someone's career, and releasing the House of Fraud original series. So at launch, we're launching with about 5 or 6 series.
Yes, we are.
And they are being hosted in a couple different areas. The main bit is a community. So the community brings this content and an engagement platform for people to break down those barriers of who to learn for, how to network with people, and open up lines of communication with different people that you didn't even know existed. And again, moving it away from a public social media channel and keeping it a private community. So it allows us to be a little bit more open around what we're talking about to solve our problems, and not necessarily always like, hey, we have this fraud spike. But I've had different challenges in my career of how do I grow? How do I become a manager? How do I get people to just listen to me? And it's not always necessarily the hard skills. The hard skills are kind of what make you the expert, but it's the soft skills that take you from the expert and turn you into a leader. And it's how you communicate and articulate that. So there's all these different skills and pillars that bring you from a fraud fighter to a fraud expert to a recognized fraud leader. So this community is a project to ultimately give people access to building your own network, make it easier to open up those conversations. And then not everyone wants to engage. Not everyone wants to communicate. Not everyone has time to meet people. So providing them content with these original different series for them to consume on their own. And the main bit is making them digestible and relatable and engaging. Not everyone has time to sit down and watch something or listen to something for an hour, 2 hours. So some episodes are 3 to 5 minutes long. Some max is about 20, 22 minutes long. So it's being able to give people the freedom to consume different types of content when they're available. You can watch the video, you can listen to the audio. So again, it gives people different ways to consume the content in their style. And it's no longer of like, hey, this is the content out there. You have to go this route, and it costs thousands of dollars, and good luck getting that budgeted. Because usually learning budgets aren't necessarily that much. So it becomes hard. It's a hard sell. Do I go for a certification? Do I go for learning so I'm more prepared for the certification? What comes first? How do I actually build my career?
Yeah. I think one of the things, like, because we've obviously been playing around in there ourselves. I think, historically, communities have always been like some sort of forum. In the classic 90s, early 2000s, you start a thread and then it just kind of goes from there. You have to scroll through 15 pages. somebody resurrects something from 10 years ago, and then here you are again. One of the things that I really like with how this particular community is the platform itself is functioned is it's more of a social media style. So it's more the classic Facebook, LinkedIn. I know who wants another one of those. But I will say, like for this one specifically, it's going to be kind of cool to know, like we have these threads in there, just like a regular social media post, but it's all people that are like us that are going to be in there. So they there's so much in this politically charged world, so much gets charged about like what's you're in an echo chamber. Well, this is an echo chamber that like is a good one to be in because it's all of us fellow fraud people in there. Now there's going to be a cost to that, and I think the cost is a moderate price, and it's $1 a day on an annual subscription, which I think is totally fair. And when this episode comes out on Friday, that we will have already launched this, so there'll be more information about it. But I think everybody really should just think about it because it's probably something that's an easier pill to swallow for expensing at your company to be in this community where we could engage with each other, ask quick questions, and then ask even like non-specific questions. Like it doesn't always have to be so dry. That's one of the things I think that a lot of forums suffer from is like they have their main discussion and then they have like just the general anything goes chat, but that's always at the bottom and so weird and off the wall, like well, at least with us in this community, it'll be people like us having conversations like us. So a lot of us think the same, you know what I mean? And then, Alexander, like you like Brian, you touched on like the how to become a manager, like the pillars of fraud. And Alexander, you want to talk a little bit about your show that's on there, where you're actually talking about the pillars of fraud.
Absolutely. So yeah, I think we're launching with the How to Build a Suit of Armor series. The idea is centered around, who better to tell, the community about how a fraud method is authored, how the discovery process works, and best how to best respond to it. So the premise is centered around building a suit of armor. Think about when you go into warfare, somebody's going to be attacking the chest. So you build the breastplate, but then they switch over and they attack the leg. Similar concept for any organization, whether you're a merchant or a financial institution. We have to have some measures in place. And so that's where we're kicking off is a philosophical approach to how to build a suit of armor around your organization and best protect you about proactively against fraud methods that are going to be coming your way.
Yeah. And then we have our show. The three of us are doing another show on there called like Fraud Unscripted, where it's just kind of us. Like we literally don't have a script. We just jump on and we kind of go at it. It's been a lot of fun. A lot of hot takes in there, that's been good. And so we'll see what comes of that. There's a few episodes already posted in there. I'm doing a show too. That's basically me just ranting about things that I don't like. Like the first one is me talking about like where 2FA annoys me and why 2FA can annoy me sometimes when people overuse 2FA. So there's that. And then Brian, you have your shows, your Fraud IRL in there. And don't you have
Fraud stories are IRL, are stories for the fraud community. So I will have at some point my own story that I will share. But it's other voices in the fraud community, because that's the biggest goal for me, is raising more voices in the fraud community and not just your regular conference route people and names. And there's challenges to that. So it's a lot of people don't actually recognize this, but I'm helping them practice their storytelling skill publicly. 101 recorded with me, but I'm helping people work on these other skills to make them well-rounded, that in avenues that they don't have. So then also allows them to say, oh, I've already spoken before. I have more confidence to go either put a submission in to speak at a conference, to go on a podcast. A lot of these things that people have come to me and be like, how do I get these? No one wants me to do it because I've never done anything before. So having these different avenues to help coach, teach people through these recordings to build up that confidence. And then they can turn around and say, I have done this. And I've talked about this, to give them that route. But for me, I'm bringing people along on actually launching a project like this, things I've learned, kind of the struggles, walking through some thoughts and decisions I've made or assumptions I'm making and why I'm making these assumptions, so people can kind of see what happens behind everything.
You could do you should call your solo show at home at the House of Fraud, and just talk about, what you're working on with the community, like how you built it, how you did it, and then what you're changing. Basically be our, like release notes, but release notes IRL.
I mean, that's kind of the idea of what I was thinking, more humanizing And like, these are like everything that I've learned to launch this aren't skills that I had before I launched this. So
Yeah.
editing,
It is
recording,
fun to learn.
digital design, like they're all skills that I've never had access to or the need to do it in a regular role, but I've been practicing and learning and tweaking. There's things that I've struggled with. There's things that have taken me way too long, and I'll get better, but it's skill development is ultimately kind of following
Yeah.
things like this.
And the same thing like with this podcast, if like it started out, I was just hitting record on a Zoom, and like so much has been learned about like studio equipment, cameras now as we introduce this, and now you've been helping me with the Descript thing, as I was going to try and just straight edit it in the old school iMovie or even Logic and whatever the other one is from Apple. I used to have it, I forget, but it's that time of day. But like so much is learned on that, and I think like one of the things that is more interesting about like this type of content is like you are learning things in a fashion that's more entertaining. Like when learning is entertainment, it's a lot more engaging. And the same thing, like I'm prepping the live show that we're going to do a live stream with my wonderful new sponsor, Sardine. Everybody, please visit Sardine .ai and learn more about their product. But we're prepping a live stream with Soups over there, and the like I put in the notes, I'm like, I don't want this to be like a webinar because webinars are so dry. And so like, I don't know about you guys, but when I listen to webinars, especially if it's a longer webinar, like I'm starting to tone out, like zone out and just be like, ooh, like I'm doing other things. I'm checking emails. Then next thing I know, we're 20 minutes in and I haven't heard a single thing, with my own ears. So I told them like, I want this live stream to be more like a couple of people at like a dinner having a conversation. Cause I think like that, like over like listening in on someone having a conversation is a lot more interesting than just watching somebody play around on a screen, And I think now with the introduction of video, especially on my show, it'll be a little more humanizing for the actual guest. It's not so much like, well, sorry for anybody that's listening to this in their car. I love you listening, but like we do have three beautiful faces here that you could be staring at too. But I want people to be able to consume the content in as many ways as they possibly want to, but also still be entertained and like looking around, like trying to figure out why I have all these posters up here, all those sorts of things. It's my favorite band, everybody, Thrice. There's a few bands up there, but Thrice is my favorite band. But yeah. So, House of Fraud is where it is. Let's talk about how to get there, how to get on, and then let's talk about the meat and bones of this particular episode, the real topic that we wanted to talk about today, if we could. So, how do we find it? What do we do? How do they expense it? All that.
Thehouseofprod.com. And what you'll land there is the job board. But up in the top right in the main CTA says join the community. Click that. That will take you right where you want to go. If you are watching this at a later date and you see a wait list, it's because I closed it. We are only going to have it open for a short amount of time. I'm going to onboard the founding members to this community, take feedback, get insight, create content with the founding members. So we will reopen it at a later date, but I want to make sure that I cater to the people who have helped us out early on and not just keep on squeezing people to come on in. So I appreciate the people that come on early. I will say, as I sit here, I'm scared. You feel so vulnerable right before something launches because I've put a lot of work in this and I've done it publicly. I have a newsletter and I've done a behind the scenes newsletter of a different segment of building up into this. So I've done it publicly. I've written a little bit about it on the company LinkedIn page. I've done a little bit on my own LinkedIn page. And I've told people, I've brought people along with me to help me provide different guest appearances, support me, advisory. So this isn't a secret. And the vulnerable part is people know. If it doesn't work, people know. If it works, people know. So like if I did this all secretly and I just launched one day randomly, I didn't tell anyone, I didn't build up a newsletter for it, it'd be like, not a big deal. Like I sat down with my wife this morning when we were having coffee to just like talk through my hesitations, how I'm feeling, and being like, I've been so confident leading up to this. I've been like excited. It's brought me energy. Like I'm doing this outside. I'm doing this outside like my normal job at Dodgeball. So it's like I have early mornings, I have late nights. So it's like you have to have confidence and it has to bring you energy to find yourself working on a project outside of your normal working hours. So up until today, where it's like, I've edited all the content I want to get up and running. I have a couple episodes I might edit and post this week to continue to bring content, because the goal of this is to have weekly content coming out. So the people who aren't writing in and the people who are engaging on the community have a reason to continue to come back in this new content, new faces, new voices, new stories. But it's kind of like, I feel like I just am opening up a restaurant and I'm peering out the window to say, is anyone walking by? Is anyone going to come in and get a sandwich for me? Did
Yeah,
I brand it right? Did I tell the right people? Did I listen to the wrong audience? Did I make some bets off that? So there's all those like imposter syndrome, what if questions. The
perfect
emails are
segue.
the emails are scheduled, and it's just kind of like, I'm now waiting to say, where are the people I listen to, were the assumptions right? Do people even want to consume content? Is this the type of content they want to consume? Is this how people want to engage? So there's all these what ifs that just, I know I talk a lot in like my newsletter of like breaking down imposter syndrome and helping build up the confidence to become recognized. But I'm almost now going through that whole exercise with myself to keep myself as steady as possible going
Yeah.
into launch.
So let's talk about imposter syndrome, because that's kind of what the topic that we wanted to talk about this year. Because I think that like everybody feels it from time to time, whether you admit it or not. I know for me personally, I'll talk about my experiences with it. I usually feel it when I switch jobs, um, because you're confident, like especially if you work for somewhere for several years, like you're confident in what you do and how to do it. You know what you're doing. You know what's supposed to be done. You know what your day looks like. And then when you switch to a different job, like you don't know if what you did at your last job is necessarily going to translate. Now, granted, in fraud, like a lot of the fraud things, like there's regulations. Like you got to keep your chargebacks a certain way. Payments have to function a certain way. Um, Settlements have to happen a certain way. Chargeback representments have to happen a certain way. But and that's all knowledge that can be transferred. But how where systems are loaded into, like whether it's pre or post auth, how the checkout flows work, all of those things are different at every company. How the teams are structured, what the responsibilities of those teams. Like some teams, like my team, for example, has to answer um, our rewards emails. So stuff that happens with like our reward systems, cash outs, all that. Like that's stuff that my team falls under their scope that didn't exist when I was at Ticketmaster. Those sorts of things. Payouts don't fall under our scope, but they kind of did a little bit. Like I worked on that a little bit at Ticketmaster. So things are kind of all over the place. So you don't know necessarily how it's going to translate when you go, and when you're starting at these new companies, when you have those first couple of days, like you're shaking, like you don't know. And this is why I always tell people to do the first 90 days to slow down and listen, because you need to understand, and you need to ask questions. And that's, I think, one of the good ways for me to how I get through the imposter syndrome is to ask questions. And then when they ask you questions, you provide answers and you have a dialogue. You don't want to come in and act like you're the boss and act like authority, especially if you're having those sorts of feelings. Like overcompensating with overconfidence is not a good way to do it. But to be vulnerable, like you said, like did you put yourself out there and you be vulnerable, that will help you. And then you'll really start to realize, oh, maybe I do know this. But I will say there are imposters in our industry that I have heard them talk about their imposter syndromes before, and it's probably a little different way that they're feeling it because they are imposters. But for the most part, when people come in, like I think Alexander, I, I think you and I have kind of had this talk before when you were coming in the industry. Can you kind of share how you felt and what it was like for you coming from the outside in to this industry? And you were like I was at a very nice 2 Michelin star restaurant with you having dinner, and you were observing all of us, watching us go crazy. So like, can you just kind of talk about a little bit about how you felt when you were coming through?
There's a lot of imposter syndrome that I felt. So super vulnerable, super open and up. When I first came over here, one, I didn't know where I stacked against other fraud methods, right? So when I was a fraudster, I had a lot of pride in my ability to put these crazy things together and see it come to life. And it was a bad pride, but at the time it was there. Then when I came over here, I didn't know where I sat. I didn't know how valuable my insight would be. I didn't know where I was valuable. I had no idea about that. Then moving forward from there, consider that I didn't have a real job, a professional responsibility for 10 years or so, whatever it was. And so I wasn't a professional person at my age, when I came over here at, how old was I? 29, I was 28, 29. Then consider that I didn't know how valuable I would be to the fraud prevention servicing merchants and financial institutions. So those three areas of mine were really, I struggled a lot with trying to identify if I have value, where I have value, and how to drive value. But luckily enough, like you just said, the 2 Michelin star restaurant out in Vegas that we all had a
So
nice
good.
dinner at. I think, what was it? Shirtless Wednesdays came into
Shirtless
play.
Wednesdays, bro. Yeah, I
Shirtless
don't have
Wednesdays.
those meetings anymore, so I have to keep the shirt on. But now that we got video, we'll see. We'll see.
That was awesome to see the camaraderie in our community. It was great to see because I think we had 2 tables and it was like 15 or 20 of us. And to see important people from across the entire spectrum just having normal conversations, trying to solve different problems and having fun while we were doing it. There was a lot of inclusion, and it helped me know that even though, came from significantly different backgrounds, that we can all fit in together. So, to your guys' point, opening up and being vulnerable, having conversations and embracing the community that's here, super important because they're going to reinforce or correct you. If you have, if there's something wrong that justifies the imposter syndrome, they'll correct it because we're all here for the common goal. So I think that the community, the camaraderie is most important for overcoming.
I'm going back through my own head, like as we're having this conversation about the different times that I felt like if I was going to be adequate or not. And I think it's especially when I start, like when I was an individual contributor, when I would start at new companies, it's like, am I going to know the tools? It's like, if you know threat metrics, you've only ever lived in threat metrics. Like, what are you going to do if you have to encounter a certify? What are you going to do when you encounter CyberSource? These were the tools that were common back then. The riskifieds, and the sardines and stuff hadn't been invented yet to help with us on these journeys. So it was a lot like, what is going to translate? Like, it's just how I write rules. This is like this is how my head works. It's like, this is how I write a rule in this tool. How do I do that same thing in another tool? And like, I knew what I would want to do, but I didn't necessarily know how to get there. Like that was kind of the thing. And that lack of just that piece, like, you have the knowledge, what you need to do it, but you don't know how to translate that. That for me was always super, super huge. I mean, granted, like now that I've switched companies enough, like I know, like I have my playbook of what I do when I join, like I said, like the first 90-day style thing where I'm like, just listen, learn, how do we do checkout? I have my list of questions that I ask but I had to build that and cultivate that over time, but I still feel that same vulnerability that like, it's a what if I can't? And that for me, I don't like, cause I think most people know my persona. I'm very confident. Some people say arrogant. That's fine. But I'm confident that I'm effective, and my effectiveness relies on my understanding. I have to understand in order to be effective. And when I don't have that understanding, I don't feel effective and I feel scared. But I think it's important for anybody listening to this episode to understand that, especially on the management side, if you're in a management track, it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to be emotional. Like in this modern age, gone are the days where it's check your baggage at the door. I don't care if your wife's leaving you, like you need to be ready to go 100%. No, we need to talk about these sorts of things so we can all have an understanding of the person, the human being. Like what Steve did on that episode that I did with emotional intelligence. Now, I don't know if I said to anybody, I don't know if I put it on here before, but Steve has since passed away since he recorded that episode with me. So I do encourage anybody to go back and listen to that episode because I cherish it very much because he was so good. He was going to come back and do a storytelling episode before he passed away. But he had a line on there where he said, the human being is valued as much as the human doing. And that is true for yourself as well. Like you can be emotional, just like maybe don't scream at people. Well, I mean, I'm guilty of that myself. But like, it's okay to feel vulnerable and tell people, hey, like I'm a little uneasy right now. I'm working through this. Let's work through this together. I think that people, when you say that, like somebody else in front of you's walls, like for the most, unless they're a complete psychopath, their walls will come down and they want to help you. It's like one of those things. It's like if you are out on the street and you're like freaking out, but and you ask for help, not like asking for a dollar, but you're like, I am so lost. Where do I go? Like the human nature is to want to help other humans. So a lot of times you will find people will be if you have the frightened look, you have the body language that says I am frightened, I'm scared. People want to help you, and you can do that in your professional life. Be like, hey, I'm trying to figure this out. Help me understand. You'll go a lot further, and then you'll have a lot better understanding. But it's just like don't be scared to ask questions, everybody.
It
Like
also
ask
helps
questions.
build trust with your own team. If you're in an authority position and you're vulnerable,
Yeah.
it helps other people open up the other way. So
100%.
a
Those
lot of
walls come down
people,
everywhere.
it helps. One, you talked about the humanizing aspect of it. It's like, all right, he's my boss, but he's showing that he's a person. We're still all people, and we all struggle different ways, different aspects of life. And some aspects and moments in life carry more into work than others. But if you are closed off, the rest of the team is probably going to feel uncomfortable sharing anything, whether they're struggling personally, professionally, whatever it may be. There for me are typically kind of like three moments. One's like a recurring moment that stand out to me of like my first really time going to leadership to get buy-in support of like, I am struggling. I've done the best I can with the least amount of tools, not hiring. I am doing the best I can with what I have. It was like my first true, like, I have to educate people. I just can't do this alone anymore. I'm breaking. I don't want to work in this place anymore. Job, career, whatever it may be. I need help. But going to the moment of being like, I need help, but then also being like, I also have to prove myself why I need help and why I need help more than someone else. So that's always one spot because it's not just, at least for me in that point in my career, it was imposter syndrome, but it's also there's this I have to prove element of are they even listening to me? Is it worth my time? So you go back and forth on that of being like, is pick and choose your battles. Is this worth a battle me having? Or can I suffer and struggle a little bit more? People might be listening to this and be like, you probably weren't in a great situation. You probably didn't have the great boss. I bounced around 8 different departments in my time there because they're like, you do fraud. You're the only person doing fraud. We don't know what the hell you do, but you've been working on a project with them. You should go report to them. So I almost had this
Yeah.
cycle of just continuously needing to improve myself, educating payments 101, chargeback 101, blah, 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 all the 101s. And then by the time I finally started to get that relationship building, it was like on. Obviously, I got burnt out. I went somewhere else because I just reached a breaking point at that point. The other time was the first time as like a manager of I coach basketball. So a lot of my like management styles is based on
You coach
managing teams.
basketball?
I've coached basketball for over 10 years, all different levels from 101 all the way up to varsity. So I've done camp
Wow.
AU
I
teams.
didn't know that.
Yep. I played basketball myself, but my brain could take me a little bit further than my height. I'm not tall. I'm just fast and can shoot, and I'm smarter than a lot of people on the court. Make good decisions. So
I
it
mean,
kind of
Muggsy
fits like
Bogues
a
made
coaching
it.
me.
CP3 makes it.
They can jump higher than I can. I can't like I have my qualities and some are stereotypical. So I took my brain that it took me to a couple better schools than my athletic abilities could have gotten. I also needed a shoulder repair and I opted to not get that because then that would have been I would have needed surgery and then that would have put me back and then I would have gotten another story another day. So yeah, a lot of my styles are based on coaching basketball, managing team, managing different personalities, getting different people motivated. It works for me because I've managed smaller teams. I haven't managed 100 plus teams, so my styles may not work at that level. I don't know, but I like the environments that I'm in. But switching to professional setting is like, I'm using this as my influence. Does this work in here? I've never had any management education. No one's ever taught me. They just said, here's a team. Take care of them. They work for you now. It's like wrong statement, but I don't really know how to manage people. So it's like, is the
Yeah.
way I'm leading this team, is that correct? Is my influences of how I manage other people in outside of the professional realm, what is transferable? What isn't that's transferable? And then the third one for me is the first fraud spike at any new job, where you just get hit and you just question everything of like,
Yeah, that's a good point.
am I good at this job? Was I only good at my last job? Or you enter a new industry, like I've done digital subscription, physical goods, marketplace, fintech. And it's like, all right, am I only good at digital subscriptions? Am I cut out for this fintech thing? Obviously I got hit. And is this something that if I only worked in fintech, I would have known? Or would this have just happened if this was a fintech professional? Something I don't know and have access to. But every first fraud spike, it's like, am I cut out for this? Should I have just stayed in marketplace? Should I have just stayed in physical goods? And it's like, all right, kind of like to what you said, Jordan, of like the playbook. I have my 90-day, I simplify it to say, first 30 is learn, next 30 is build, the following 30 is prove or show, learn, build, show.
Okay.
And the idea is 30 days, you meet your stakeholders, you meet your partners. I usually took over from fraud by committee. So who are the people that are handling a little bit of the tasks? Where's leadership want to go? What do leadership really care about? Build the relationships. Take all that information, building it into the processes or a plan to improve our tools or ruling. And then the next 30 days is show them why they hired me, show the value, what quick wins can I get in, what people can I bring together. And then that's at least how I try to attack things. It's obviously super simplified. It doesn't always take 30 days. It doesn't always take 90 days as a whole, but in the
Yeah.
very
Usually
simple
I
form,
get
that's how
thrown
I
to the
break it down.
fire.
Yeah.
Like I
Week
try,
one,
and then something they're like, no, never mind right now. Like this is happening. We got to fix this right now. I'm like, oh shit, here we go. But I still try.
You
I
brought
still
up
try to do my 90 days.
you brought up a really good point in that plan, and that was to find the easy wins, right? When you're in a new environment, find out what you are confident in and let that be the foundation that you build onto as you get into the bigger and the better things. I think that's a very important thing that a lot of people can resonate with is as you go about your day, really embrace what you were successful at. If you're looking to overcome, if you feel like you're an imposter in these roles, find where your success was, and they'll be subjectively motivating to you. And you can overcome, by focusing on your wins as you start to step out of your comfort zone. I think that's one thing that I would definitely wanted to touch on.
I think for me, like it's been an interesting transition from being hands-on with the fraud tools to not being hands-on. And even on the internal tools, like the back-end tools, like, because that's where like the first big chunk of my career in this space was like, I was the guy, like I was the one that was making the rules. I was the one that was fighting the fraud. I was the one that was answering the fraud. And then, the last 5-6 years has not been so much of me doing that. I'd say the last 5, now 6 now, because we're in 2024 now, has been me not doing that at all. And that's been, it makes you feel really removed, but at the same time, like you have to transition into this other type of role where you are, like, I would say, like, especially when I was at Ticketmaster, like 70% of my day was probably management versus fraud, which is a lot different. And, at this company too, especially HR, I think HR is very across since 2020, HR has become very engaged in employee engagement. So there's a lot of different, like we have like almost weekly, we have some big long thing, like how to like team building stuff that we have to do online, all sorts of different, how to manage people leader, like weeklies, all of these things to try it. And then a lot of training, which for me is kind of like an overload. Like I'm like, this is so much, but I understand where they're trying to do it because like human capital is so massive. And we are a remote first company. So like we don't get to see each other very much. So having these sorts of things like makes people more engaged because, some of the stuff that like our company doesn't do well in is stuff that requires you to be in an office. So like we do really great, like we're California, like one of the top places to work, survey thing, all that. But where we have like struggle is like one of the things like I'll say is like, do we have a best friend at work? And as a company, we struggle at that. But it's hard to have a best friend at work when you don't see these people. You're not sitting next to them. You're not going to lunch with them. That changes a lot. And the same thing with like onboarding at a company when you are a manager and you've never seen these people before. Like, how do you get engagement? How do you get them to trust you? How do you get them to understand you when you're not physically there. And like a lot of people's answers are you have a lot of Zooms, you see them a lot. We try to do that, try to be a little less formal with it. But it it works pretty well, I would say at the end of the day. I've done well. I'm very understanding of my people, but when I transition into a new role, like when I went into management, I know how I like to be managed. So I tried to do that way. But there is like, you can't be scared to fail. I think there's always those LinkedIn positive comments. They failed 50 times before I struck gold, you know? But like you like, don't be scared to fail. Like I was too forgiving and too understanding at first, you know? So there is, you don't want to be too harsh. I think a lot of people, especially like in like fast food and retail settings, like those people, like they become managers just because they've been there the longest time, not because they have the skills to necessarily do it. And those people are like, you got to find somebody to cover your schedule. I don't care. I'm going away. Like there's no understanding. There's no actual management. They're just there to be an asshole.
I'll
And
say
for
there's
me,
there's
you know, I tried to not
another
be.
piece to that. There's another piece to this, and
Yeah.
I won't. This is not. It didn't originally come from me, but it really resonated with me, and part of it was this individual. It was a peer, so it was like he handled one function, I handled the other function, but he would do this with his peers, his boss, and his direct reports, and it was how do you like to be praised, and how do you like to be criticized? So some people like to be praised publicly. Some people like to be praised with gifts. Some people like to be praised with just like private positive words of affirmation. Good job. How do you like to be criticized? Do you like to be more direct? Do you like to be compliment, like direct? Like
That's
what
funny.
is your
We had
style?
that at T-Mobile.
Yeah.
T-Mobile, the manager did that. And one of the girls, she was like, she's like, "Well, I would prefer that you say something nice, like, about my outfit or my hair before you give me feedback." And, like, she
Yeah.
did, like, she was dead serious about it too, and, like, that manager, I will say, was good enough there that she did do it that way. But
But
go
if
on.
it works
That's
and
true
helps
because, like, I
people get
yeah,
feedback, then it's only beneficial to both of you. Like I know my style. My style's not going to work for most people. I can be direct. Just my
yeah.
mentality of like, here's a problem,
Radical
let's solve it.
candor. In management, that's called radical candor.
But like that's my style. They're
Now,
like working with me, and it works. So, like if someone's like that with me, it's not a problem to me. But if that person then goes to like my peer, it might be like crushing team morale. And then there's conversations having behind people's back of like talking them through it, working them through, and then that person that gave the feedback is totally blind to it. They don't know that there's something happening, or there's this hesitation, or they don't want to meet in their one-on-one. They're afraid to go in their one-on-one, or anything of the
yeah.
sort like that. So there's a lot of things that can happen behind the scenes that you're just unaware of if you're unaware of like the relationship style, communication style.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, like, just so everybody knows, like, don't be scared to go to your one-on-ones. This is 2024, and it's really hard to fire somebody. So, unless you've had like 15 different one-on-ones where they're telling you like you're on a PIP, your third PIP of the year, like you're probably gonna be okay. Just you know, fix your shit. At the end of the day. All right. So as we go to wrap up here, because we are running out of time on this particular one, let's rattle off. I mean, we are literally in the first week of 2024, so it's gonna kind of be hard. But like, what do you guys think are going to be the top fraud trends of the year?
My answer is always boring. Nothing new is going to be the main focus. A lot of people like to focus on the shiny things, the doomsday. For me, it's scale is going to happen more and the
Yeah.
blindness is going to happen more. So it's the conversations I have are mainly focused on 3 checkpoints. In my career, my roles have been mainly focused on 3 checkpoints.
You guys do love threes, both of you guys, just for the record.
Who doesn't love a good 3? They come in, they make it easy. Account openings,
Well, I can say there's a lot
logins,
of jokes in there, a lot of ways we could have went with that.
money movement. Sometimes I just try to ignore you and just keep on going. I think it's for the safety of everyone else who's
This is my
listening too.
show. This is my show. So yeah, don't get
I
canceled
don't
on my show.
I don't know what's going to happen of what you edit into it. You like we could
Oh, I'm
just
leaving that
have,
shit in. That's
yeah,
staying in.
but it's
So
those
talk about your
3.
threes. I mean your threes.
My 3s: account openings, logins, money movement, some type of transaction, checkout, deposit, withdrawals. It's really figuring out how to gain access, there's a lot of breaches happening. So can I automatically use this information to create new accounts? Can I automatically use this information to take over an account? Neither of those are new, but the scale is getting better. And then once they're in, how can they hide the platform usage of like device fingerprinting or VPNs aren't new, proxy piercing, all that isn't new
Yeah.
to just monetize the fraud to get in. They're not necessarily complex. They're not necessarily executed by like maybe even career fraudsters. It might be like level 1, level 2 fraudsters that they learn in a Telegram group, but it's easy to execute it, that the knowledge share is happening. So they go to the easiest method to learn and monetize until it's blocked. And it's just at scale at that point. It's like this ant problem that just won't go away.
Yeah. So I think that that's a good point, Alexander. We'll get to you in just a second here. But like, because I'm going to do a longer episode about this, a live stream about this. But I think that that's exactly right. Like, I see less carding happening and more of the scam stuff happening. More of like, because carding doesn't seem to be as profitable as it used to be. It still exists, but what I see more is like the scam. So like obviously pig butchering is huge, but even like you can't go anywhere on like Reddit, you can't go anywhere on Facebook or anywhere anymore without seeing those chat bots trying to engage in conversations with people, which I know what they're up to. They're going to working any money in some capacity, some way. And it used to be like there are people that have been doing it for, the call center's been doing it for a long time, but now everybody's doing it. It's everywhere. And I think like, with Zelle, I was kind of, it's going to be on the other show, but with like Zelle offering refunds now, fintechs aren't going to like that. They aren't going to like that. They're going to have to pay for people that are romance scams. Regulation E does say like, if you're not part of, like if you did it willingly, like you're not covered necessarily, like if you're complicit in it, but where do they draw the line? So I think we're going to see, depending on how, I think we're going to see either slowed down Zelle completely or people exiting the Zelle partnership. To where they're not even going to be like, Zelle's not going to be an option anymore. You can do classic transfer, regular stuff with all these notifications, but that's where I see is like, because there's so much of it, it's like a 49% increase year over year. There's so much of it that banks are going to pause and pump the brakes on this fintech technology. So that's my thoughts. So Alexander, what do you got?
That's actually counter what I have to say about technology. So I think that, so we've seen the abundance of identity information flooding into the market. We just saw Comcast, Xfinity, 30 million, 35 million additional.
I'm seeing that attempts already. Like I'm seeing stuff from that breach happening already on my side.
Then we see the checks taking off. Checks aren't going anywhere. We predicted that checks were going to go somewhere 30, 40 years ago. They never did. And then the third thing, to keep it with threes, and this is where you and I see it differently. I think that demand for functionality from financial institutions and financial services is bringing high-level functionality down into the mid-tier financial institutions, the credit unions, and then the emerging fintechs.
I think that there is a demand for the technology, but I don't think that there's a receptiveness. And I know that you said on one of our other shows that you've been doing a lot of work with fintechs more recently, where they're more receptive to technology. But
everyone under the FI umbrella,
yeah. It seems though that like they're interested, but they're not. The rubber isn't meeting the road when it comes time to act. And what happens, it seems like, is instead of just them addressing the problem with technology, they remove the problem that is the technology instead. It just seems like they just take things away from us more.
I see that happening with partnerships. I don't see that. I mean, just look at how viable checks have become in digital payments.
Checks are back, man. People are asking for checks from me more than ever. Like, I got to pay my pool guy with a check.
Dude,
that's crazy.
So it's crazy. So in my opinion, I think that, so I don't go into this publicly, but I'll share a little bit. There was a method that I used to do 10 years ago that specifically used checks, identity information, and at the end of it, the fraudster was able to have exclusive control over mule accounts, and exclusive control over established accounts, and then make the money moves in between them. And I think, Brian, you and I spoke about this a little bit. Looking out at the opportunity between the compromised identity information from these breaches, the checks that are available, and then the technology, the viability of checks throughout the marketplace. I think that's something that requires a lot of attention. I'm writing a post about it right now where the amount that a single check is worth could literally be infinite. Like there's just so many use cases, and I see the opportunity for fraudsters using those two data sets. I'm not one to sign on for doomsday prophecies, but I'm very scared to see what happens in the coming year.
Woo. Here we go. There we go. First episode starting off with the doomsday. But hey, thank you guys. As always, Bros Talking Fraud. I love it. The new community House of Fraud is going to be out by the time this episode is out. Everybody, it's coming out on Friday. So everybody, go check it out. Please sign up. It's going to be cool. It's going to be fun. I want to thank you guys again for coming on my show. We're going to do this once a quarter. We have decided we're going to do Bros Talking Fraud. It's going to be a regular thing on my show. Thank you, everybody, for bearing with us on episode 1 of video. I hope my edit comes out great, but we'll see everybody in 2 weeks. Thanks for listening to today's show. Again, let's give a warm welcome to Sardine as our Q1 sponsor. We've all heard about how AI can help us reduce manual work from increased fraud attack volumes, but figuring out how to apply it alone is a massive undertaking. With Sardine, you get fraud tools for your fraud squad and their entire in-house fraud squad to help you use it. From KYC to onboarding fraud and payment fraud, with over 4,000 signals like device, email, and telco, to AML monitoring. They have a rule builder with custom ML models, and they ship new features weekly. Like I said at the top of the show, you're not buying just one of the best tools, but the whole team behind it. Please give them a warm welcome by visiting www.sardine.ai today. We'll see you in 2 weeks.